Welcome to the first episode of Ace Media, or Ace Reviews, or Ace Rev. I don't know. Names are hard. You know what else is hard? Being surrounded by monsters in space that are attempting to cyberize you. And what might be even harder is trying to navigate the nuances of an atypical relationship structure while all of that is going on. And yet, that kind of seems to be Gnosia in a nutshell. A story that originally seems to be about finding the enemy, but is really about finding and fighting for connection. Gnosia was originally released in 2019 as a visual novel video game in the style of Werewolf or Among Us. But while those games are more so about finding out who done it, this game is more so about trying to understand who everyone actually is. The characters of Gnosia all start the story on this planet called Luan, when these human-hating creatures known as Gnosia attack, causing the characters to flee to a ship for safety. Unfortunately, the Gnosia follow them on board, which starts this whole process in which the human characters have to try and figure out the enemy among them. At the same time, certain characters are using this device called a silver key that allows them to loop through time and basically start over at the beginning, creating these new branching paths of what happens. So in other words, that central Luan evacuation plot always happens, but the characters who make it onto the ship and the ones who are infected with Gnosia or as Gnosia will differ. The anime was released in October of last year and just ended yesterday. By and large, fans and critics seem pretty pleased with the adaptation, which at first was pretty faithful to the video game, but definitely diverged and added some things and made some changes towards the end. While I've seen several videos discuss those changes and some of the more general themes of transhumanism and learning to accept others, something that I haven't really seen discussed is the central love story that takes place between the asexual Setsu and the aspect-coded Yuri. So to start off, I kind of want to discuss how gender functions in this world and is understood, because it does kind of play into these themes. In the world of Gnosia, there is a third gender called Han or Pan, which we most readily would associate with agender or maybe non-binary, null gender, nullification, surgery. It's a little complicated. Some of these Pan characters do get panification surgery, which basically means removing all sexual characteristics, physical sexual characteristics. Others, like Rakio, basically just say they don't have a gender and that it's not reliant upon what sexual characteristics they have, though they also claim that they're going to get the surgery at a later date. And then there are characters like Yuri, where we don't really understand how they identify in a gender level. Their gender and sexual characteristics definitely change throughout the series. In different episodes, they start off in different bodies, but how they begin the series identifying and where they wind up is a little less clear. With that out of the way, there is this conflation among characters that to be Han or Han is also to be asexual and possibly aromantic. In the case of Setsu, that first part at least happens to be true. Another character, SQ, explicitly asks them, "Hey, I thought you were asexual," and Setsu answers in the affirmative. In the case of Rakio, it's kind of implied, since there's this part where they're basically like, "You're asexual, Setsu, why do you need, what's the purpose of a spiritual connection?" And then they gesture to themselves in a way where it's like, are they also referring to themselves? And when it comes to Yuri, it is again less clear. This is a reoccurring pattern. But towards the end, there is a moment where they tell Xiaoming that there's someone precious to them, but that they don't want to bang this person. We also don't see them lusting over characters on the ship the way that so many others in the show do. And really just every single one of their relationships seems to be grounded in emotion and this desire and attempt to understand. In any case, Setsu early on refers to Yuri as their lover. To be fair, this lie was meant to ward off suspicions because they're collaborating together, and if they were to say, "Oh, it's because we've been looping together and we know each other," that would, yeah, in Among Us terms, that would be sus. However, this declaration that they're lovers does become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy towards the end. The build-up to their relationship is honestly handled better in the video game than it is in the anime, but that's mostly due to time constraints within the anime. Plus, the anime does have some really sweet moments of them fishing for otome together. They also watch a movie together, and they're more generally trying to support each other as they try to close these loops, even when they're on opposite sides of this Gnosia human divide. More than that, the anime does a good job of showing how Yuri and Setsu come to understand each other because of these parallel situations they're in. No one else on the ship has a silver key, which means no one else is looping, and no one else remembers what previously happened in other loops. The only two who remember what they have lost and learned would be Yuri and Setsu. Rakio says that the entire point of the silver key is that it craves knowledge. But it's not like trying to learn about math or cooking or anything like that. It is trying to learn about people and the connections between them. And through their hundreds and hundreds of loops, that is exactly what Yuri and Setsu wind up doing. Relatedly, there are multiple loops in which another character essentially confesses their feelings towards Yuri. And they're cool about it, they're nice and all that, but come the next loop, it's almost like it didn't happen. To be clear, Yuri does come to love and understand all of these characters, but at the heart of their story is Setsu, and at the heart of Setsu's story is Yuri. When Yuri ends their loop cycle, the silver key opens up a portal to a different dimension. Due to an entity known as Gnosia and also time shenanigans, there are now 2 Yuris in Dimension A, which means the universe is going to continue breaking until there's only one. Setsu decides to go through the portal with this second Yuri so that their Yuri can continue living on in Dimension A. Only in order to complete their own loop cycle, they have to give Yuri, the one in Dimension A, their silver key. And since that Yuri is no longer in their dimension, that basically means Setsu has sacrificed themselves to continue looping forever. After realizing this, Yuri decides that they have to do anything in their power to get Setsu to stop looping, which means getting another silver key from Rakio, doing hundreds of more loops so that they can then open another portal to get them over to that dimension and see Setsu again. Only now the original issue seems to have come up again in that there are 2 Yuris in Universe B. In theory, this means that one Yuri will have to disappear in order to allow the cycle and story to end, or I guess in one sense for the story to continue. But much like Yuri will not let Setsu loop forever, Setsu refuses to let Yuri disappear and comes up with a plan to save them. The ending is left ambiguous. Whether Setsu's plan succeeds kind of comes down to these 2 images in the end credits that kind of contradict each other. But regardless, this back and forth desire and need to support and save each other is a very real form of love. I don't know if they'd call it romantic or queer platonic or something else, maybe even something different than love, but whatever word they use, that's not what matters. What matters is this connection that the word encapsulates. On that note, their relationship, of course, is not the only important or super deep one in the series. The other A-spec-coded character, Rakio, would probably describe none of their relationships as romantic or sexual, and they probably wouldn't even use the word love to describe how they feel towards others. But it is so obvious that they care. From giving the silver keys to helping Yuri figure out how to break the loop cycle, after first trying to convince them not to so that they could save themselves, Rakio was just always prioritizing the other characters, even as they pretended not to want to be around them. They simultaneously embodied these stereotypes about aces and arrows being cold or heartless or antisocial, while also thoroughly debunking them. In essence, they are the least emotional, most logical, least desirous, or most anti-desire character in the entire series. Yet arguably they're also the one that cares about people the most. They are also the best character, but that is a separate video. In any case, it's interesting to contrast the relationships between Yuri and Setsu and Rakio with all of these other relationships between the characters on the show. There's Jonas, who lost the love of his life and his mind and bought a doll to replace her. There's Shigemichi, who seems kind of obsessed with Stella, and then it goes absolutely nowhere. There's also Xiaoming, who, besides being a video essay himself, harasses the other characters, misgenders them, is just kind of a jerk, largely due to this kind of self-isolation loneliness. And then, of course, there's Ronan, who was literally sexually assaulted and spends the entire show running away from this person. Plus, if you go outside of romantic or sexual relationships, Gina and SQ, their relationships with their respective mothers, awful, horrible, just the worst. Really, the best relationships in the show all involve Yuri, and Yuri's best relationship involves Setsu, followed arguably by Rakio. Or I guess you could also say Gina, but Gina has purple hair, so we're counting her under this asexual spectrum. So what is the overall takeaway here when it comes to asexuality and aromanticism? That both types of people can and often do have deep connections. That bonds without sex or romance can be some of the strongest. And that love, or whatever word you want to use for it, doesn't always look the same from person to person or relationship to relationship, nor should it. So would I recommend this show for aces and aros to watch? Yes and no. The aspec coding is fantastic, but it does have a lot of the fan service for which anime is known, primarily involving a 16-year-old and another character who is both 1 and in her 20s. It also, as previously mentioned, involves a few instances of sexual assault, as well as a character unaliving themselves in somewhat graphic detail several times during at least one episode. Not to mention another character goes on a murder spree, plus the more general Gnosia trying to cyberize everyone, and these are just a few of the things. However, do I think that this show is of value to the ace and aro community? Absolutely. In a world whose central question is what does it mean to be human, it depicts ace and aro spectrum characters as complicated and caring. It also, for the most part, accepts these characters and their identities as just a part of who they are. In Gnosia, connection first and foremost isn't about sex or romance. It's about wanting to know someone and stand by their side. Perhaps the best summary I can give is this. Setsu begins the story asking Yuri, "Do you understand?" And in the end, Yuri does understand in a way that no one else can. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I have a bunch more ideas in the works for media rep regarding ace and aro spec characters. If you want to see more about Gnosia and that, please let me know in the comments. Or if you have other media you'd like me to cover, please let me know as well. I kind of want to sign off by saying I ace appreciate you, so feel free to lend sign-off suggestions as well. Thanks.